Interestingly, I have a partner in crime who was supposed to join us remotely. I guess it's an advantage-disadvantage thing, because now the probability of online failure has gone down, but the risk to me personally has gone up. Because I'm entirely responsible for the next 45 minutes of your life. So bear with me. As I have sat here today, all the way from Alex this morning, Philip's introduction and Alex, and then listening through OSHA, through Alex, and then Tony, a number of things came, kind of just like, wow, yeah, I agree with that. And I wanted to give Tony an amen, because we use boom lifts and scissor lifts a lot on our job sites. So we are a general contractor, construction manager out of Bloomfield, and we do a lot of work around the capital area. So we use this stuff all the time. And I will strongly encourage you, if you have scissor lifts in your workplace, or you have people who use scissor lifts in your workplace, or boom lifts, or any combination of the above, get the training that Tony talked about. If you are responsible for safety in your workplace, the supervisory training class that he referred to, the IPAF supervisory class, or the JLG has a supervisory class. It's $100. I think it's 4 hours online. It's like the place to start to help you develop a safety program for your lifts, your access platforms. Great stuff. So as we get started, I took some notes this morning, and this is where you guys have to take notes, because I've watched as a lot of people have been sitting here, and everybody's kind of waiting for PowerPoint to fill in the blanks for them, and nobody's writing anything down, but now you have to, because I added a slide. I'm going to encourage you to write these things down. First of all, Alex talked about culture this morning. The reason I'm asking you to write these things down is because I'm talking about safety committees, and when you go back to your workplaces on Monday or next month or whenever it is, and you have your next safety committee meeting, it's always, what do I talk about? What are we going to do? What should we focus on? So these are key things that I've heard in the notes from today that I think we really need to look at. First of all is culture. Understand how safety really needs to pervade everything that you do, every activity that you have, every operation that you perform, every contractor you bring on site, every employee that you bring into the workplace. Safety is a value, it's not a priority, because priorities change, right? And what is the priority of being in business? Profitability, right? You have to have safety to be profitable, and that's part of culture. So I think it's really important that you understand that. Training versus education. Training to me is the what to do. Training is incorporated in all of the OSHA standards to some degree or another. As Tony referenced in the ANSI standard for mobile elevating work platforms, there is a training platform, basically. They tell you how to train, exactly what you're supposed to cover. That's the what stuff. Like he said, the guy that drove through the sidewalk knew how to drive a lift, but he didn't understand the concept. And that's where I think, again, as somebody who participates on a safety committee or the one-person safety organization that you may be in your workplace, responsible for HR and safety and production and ordering the materials for the bathroom, if somebody's laughing, I know what you're talking about, right? Been there, done that. Having people understand that safety is a component part of everything that you do in the workplace. That's the education part. You want people to do what is necessary to be done because they want to, because they believe it's the right thing. That, to me, is the difference between education and training. Training is how to do something, and education is why. So that's more or less why we're here for the next 40 minutes and 23 seconds, is to talk about the whys. Why are we here? What are we here for? Thank you all for staying to the extent that you have. Another thing that came up, there's been a lot of conversation about what constitutes adequate training. If I have, somebody mentioned having documentation of toolbox talks. That's a great start, but all that is documentation. It doesn't prove that the people that you've spoken to actually absorbed anything. So part of what we need to understand is ANSI ASSP has Z490.1 safety training development guidance. You can actually buy the ANSI standard, and it tells you line by line by line how to develop a safety program. There are programs out there that if you look online and they say that they're compliant with ANSI Z490.1, that's going to get you a long way to having an effective training program. That can be your guidance document. If you need to build training, that's the document to use. It uses the ADDIE model. Who's familiar with the ADDIE model for training? Anybody here? ADDIE basically boils it down. We like to use acronyms to kind of summarize the process. It's analyze the need. What are the issues that we have? Do we need to train on scissor lifts? Do we need to train on chemical safety? Do we need to train on rigging? Whatever it may be. We need to design the program. Is it going to be video? Is it going to be PowerPoint? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be in person, et cetera? We need to develop it. What component parts does it take? What information do we have to gather? What references do we want to use? All of that. We need to then implement it, which takes time. You have to figure out how many people are going to be in the room and how long is it going to be and do we have to feed them and what time do they want to leave and oh, it's Friday afternoon. Thank you, Philip, for scheduling me for the last presentation of the day. You know, I thought when I joined the advisory committee for CBIA, when we talked about, developing the safety conference, that I would just help develop the programs and you guys would do the training. Here I am at 3:30 on a Friday. No, that's a joke. I mean, I love doing this stuff, and I'm awake for it because this is my passion. I've been doing it for 33 years. And it never gets old because there's always new faces in the group, and there's always people who are looking at me with that same look in their eye like, deer in the headlights, oh my goodness, they told me I need to have a safety committee, and it's been 2 years, we haven't had a safety committee meeting because of COVID, and now what are we supposed to do? So ADDIE goes through the process. Anything that you implement, you always need to reevaluate and see, is it effective? And I think one of the most important terms that I've used over the years is demonstrable skills, and I think Tony referred to it as proficiency. OSHA will know if your employees are trained by their success or failure. It doesn't matter how much documentation you have, and I liken it to, I have this picture in my mind, because I've done fatality investigations and I've seen bodies on the pavement. And I have this visual in my mind of having a safety program and bringing it over and using it as kind of a shroud over the dead body. Well, I had a program, I'm covered. But if there's a dead body in your workplace, you missed something. Something failed. That is a demonstrable failure. So part of what we need to do as safety professionals or safety geeks or HR safety bathroom monitor is to go out there into the workplace and see what's going on. The training that we've taken, is it actually effective in the workplace? You have to evaluate, and you have to see demonstrable skills. A couple of other things I thought were interesting is the term controlling entity. As a general contractor construction manager, we manage our job sites. We work for a lot of large commercial operations in the capital area. And we have electricians subcontract to us and plumbers and steel erectors, et cetera. But we run the schedule. We pay them for their activities. We evaluate the quality of their work. We overlap their activities to make sure that the electricians go in the ceiling before the plumber does, or whatever the case may be, to make sure that there's no clash with that construction process. We control it. So we know that the iron workers are out there hanging steel today at 2 o'clock. We can control that. If it's unsafe, we can shut them down. We have the authority to do that. And I think every one of us needs to recognize that, not necessarily as contractors, and I think you said you're a contractor, right? So you understand what I'm talking about and how hard that can be. But those of you that are in an industrial environment or a manufacturing environment, you have jobbers come in that do work for you, whether it's electricians who come up in their one-man van, or it's a plumbing company who has a half a dozen vans and they show up to do an HVAC changeover for you. You own the space that they're working in. And I'll give you an example. You have an HVAC technician hired as a contractor to come up and change filters in the air handling units on your roof. How do they get there? I don't know. You think you should know? Are they climbing up that same hatch that your guys go up to and do inspections through? The one that everybody complains about because the ladder rung is inside the hatch and you hold onto that last rung and you got to step over the hatch to get onto the roof? They make a simple device for that. It's about $500. It's called the ladder up device. Bolts onto the ladder, extends when you climb up, and you have something to hold on to when you step onto the roof. Is that an OSHA requirement? No. Is it a liability limiting device? Absolutely. And that's part of what we need to think about. It's not just OSHA compliance. If you are simply OSHA compliant, you're not as effective in managing safety as you might like to think. You have to go above and beyond what OSHA says you have to do. Like Tony referenced the ANSI standards. The ANSI standards are 40 years beyond what's referenced in the OSHA standards. What's referenced in the OSHA standards, basically the old school JLG, the very first JLG that was made, I think was like in 1972, it looks like a Volkswagen chassis with an arm on it. Literally open wheels and open machinery and whatnot. In 2001, I went to McConnellsburg, Pennsylvania, which is one of JLG's manufacturing plants, and they told me I have to stay on the stage because the cameras can follow me. I'm going to step off the stage. I'm going to break the rules. I went to, it's 3 o'clock on a Friday. So go out to McConnellsburg, and it's a 2.5-day train-the-trainer program for boom lift and scissor lift safety. That's the kind of training. If you want to be a trainer, go to the manufacturer and take the training, because they will teach you not only how to operate the lift, but they will also teach you the concepts of adult learning and how to communicate with adults. Most of us remember the school that we went to, middle school and high school, and we kind of teach that way. We don't get people involved in the process. We tell them what they have to do. And that's part of what that specific program gives you, is it brings you into the process, to the point that as part of our training, we had to go out and inspect the lifts. And then they have an area that's probably twice the size of the parking lot out here, an obstacle course that you could drive over and around and through. And as I recall, that was the first year that they came up with the 85-foot boom lift. And myself and an operations manager for another construction company were together in the boom lift. And they said, elevate it. This lift can operate. You can actually drive this lift with the boom elevated. Go ahead and take it all the way up and drive. 85 feet in the air. And there's a pile of dirt over there, an incline. And it's got tire tracks on it. He says, go ahead. Watch what happens. It's amazing. As you go over it, the bucket will compensate for your change in elevation. So your boom is up like this, but when you go up the hill, the boom goes like that, right? So the bucket goes from flat to like this, unless it's compensating. So we get halfway up the hill, and the bucket isn't self-leveling. The basket isn't self-leveling. So myself and the other guy are leaning against the back guardrail, and the machine stops in the middle of the hill with the boom, the boom at an angle like this, and the basket over like this, and we're leaning against the back guardrail going, guys, get us down. We're 85 feet in the air at the manufacturing plant. Thankfully, they have a lower unit control that somebody could get us down, and they figured out that it was some type of an interlock in the control panel. That was at the manufacturing plant. You think that stuff happens on a job site or in your workplace? When was the last time you actually had a factory-authorized inspector come out and inspect your equipment, whatever it is, whether it's a scissor lift or a boom lift or whatever? Factory-authorized. So controlling entity, you own the risk in your workplace, whatever it is. As soon as people drive in your driveway, park in your parking lot, walk into your building, you own that risk. You have to control it. Your job on a safety committee will never be done. Don't get complacent. Don't think, hey, man, we're good for another 3 months. You're not. You're never done. I've been doing this for 33 years, and I'll probably be doing it, for like another 10 anyway. And I'm not going to be done. I thought I had my own business back in the 90s, and I thought that I was going to solve the problems of the world, and I was going to keep everybody safe. And it's taken me 33 years to learn that there's no freaking way I'm going to be able to do that. So bite-sized chunks, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, one day at a time. Criminality and enforcement. I was so pleased to hear after so many years of talking about excavation safety. And I remember Bob Kowalski, who used to be the area director down in, for OSHA down in Bridgeport, said to me 10 years ago, he said, Marko, as far as I'm concerned, any excavation citation is a willful citation. These rules have been in place since 1990. These guys know this stuff. We talk about it all the time. We have special emphasis programs. We know the industry knows about this stuff. I'm glad that there's more enforcement. I think that's awesome. On the flip side, if you don't do your jobs well, there's a potential for criminality. So, what we do is difficult, and it's not without risk as safety managers, safety directors. And then the consultation programs that OSHA talked about. Whether it's Paul Mangiafico with federal OSHA, who can speak to groups like this, or Ann Bracker from Connecticut DOL, who can organize specific application of safety evaluations in your workplace, whether it's noise or dust or whatever. Free, easy consultation. It's a great place to start. If you're just getting started and you don't know what to do and what to focus on, call Connecticut Department of Labor and sit down with them and get some good information. They will help you through the process. Can't speak highly enough of that. All right, so those are my notes from the day, more or less. Those are, I think, the real key things. And I think this kind of gives you a good list to act on when you go back and you start talking about your safety committee. So what is a safety committee? It's basically an employee engagement program. How do you keep people awake and alive in your workplace? How do you keep them engaged in the process? How do you build rules that mean something to them? Again, we talked about education being the why to do things. A safety committee is really about establishing the why for everybody in the workplace. Yes, we have to have compliance with OSHA, and we have to have written programs, and we have to have documentation and all of that stuff. But what we need to do is we need to engage with each other. And we need to find the issues that are out there in the workplace, and we need to talk about them. What else is it? Well, it's a compliance issue, right? How many of you have more than 25 employees in your workplace? So everybody that has your hand up, leave your hands up. Do you have a safety committee? If you don't have a safety committee, put your hand down. Okay? It's the law. Thank you. It's the law. In the state of Connecticut, if you have more than 25 employees, you have to have a safety committee. And I guess I made the mistake of putting the link kind of hidden between Connecticut Safety Committee requirements. That's a Workers' Comp Commission link. You can Google it, look up State of Connecticut Safety Committee requirements, and you'll come up with exactly what you need to do. They'll tell you, you have to meet quarterly. You have to take notes. You have to follow up. And if that's all you want to do, we're done. Make sure you fill in your evaluations, give me a 4, and we're good. But it's more than that. It's understanding that there's a payoff in this. The investment in safety reaps dividends. It pays you back. It reduces your insurance costs. It reduces injuries. It reduces the cost of injuries because you develop a management program to get people back to work as quickly as possible. Those are all things that the safety committee can do. It gives some type of a pipeline to transfer information. Part of what has been talked about throughout the day is a lot of people don't like to complain about stuff because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble. And we heard a lot of information about whistleblowers. Safety committees can be kind of the liaison between management and personnel in the field, and they can bring that message to people who can do something about it. That's, I think, one of the key components of a good safety committee. And obviously, the safer we are, the less likely we are to get cited for something or for somebody to get hurt, which is always a good thing. Right? Who is going to do it for you? When I started in safety, I was a project manager for a construction company, and we had an excavation that was 14 feet deep, and OSHA saw it, and they stopped, and they did a visit, and they said, how'd you get in that excavation? Don't see a ladder here. And we said, well, we rode the excavator bucket down. Guys climbed in the bucket and went down. Well, it doesn't look like you were protected while you were in there. And our foreman's response was, well, it was raining out. We had raincoats. True story. I am not kidding you. I'm not making this up. That citation cost our company, this was back in 1989, cost our company $15,000 in 1989 dollars. So what's that now? $75,000 or something like that? Part of the settlement agreement was to write a safety program, appoint a safety director. So the owner calls me into his office and he says, Marko, get OSHA off my back. That was my mandate for being the named safety director. Get OSHA off my back. So I called up our local building association and said, guys, we need a safety program. So they faxed me over a copy of somebody else's, in the curly paper, back when we had curly paper faxes. Anybody, some of the younger people are looking at me like, what, curly paper fax? What's a fax? So we got somebody else's copy, and I retyped it on, remember the computers with the 5.5-inch floppy drives? With the green screen and everything? Yeah, so we typed up our own safety program, and we gave it to OSHA, and they said, that's excellent. And I went to all the training. I got competent person trained this, competent person trained that, and I had all these books and papers, and I brought them back to our owner, and I said, this is the stuff we have to do. And he looked at me, and he said, I'll do it when my competitors do it. I'll do it when there's a pay item for it, because we did a lot of DOT work, and we would get paid per manhole, per linear foot of catch basin, of pipe, per square yard of soil. It was all broken down. Show me a line item for a trench box, and I'll bring a trench box out. And that was pretty much the attitude that we had. It took a fatality for me to realize, a fatality in one of our jobs, to realize that what we were doing was BS. So when I started my own safety consulting business in 1994. You need somebody who has passion for it. They don't have to be a safety professional. They have to have the capacity to understand what the rules and regulations are. But you really just need somebody with passion and good organizational skills. Being a safety person is not that hard, really, because there are regulations you can follow. It's that simple. It's just getting people to want to do it. So when you put your program together and you put your committee together, you need somebody who's organized and you need somebody who's passionate. And those don't always coexist, so make sure that you choose the right people to do it. I would strongly recommend that when you put your program together, you put your committee together, you find naysayer Bob, whoever that is, that one man or woman in your workplace who says, that's not going to work. Oh, no way, I'm not doing that. They can't make me, or whatever, the normal response is. And you know who I'm talking about, right? Each one of you has a picture in your mind of somebody in your workplace. You know who they are right now. That's the person who you want to walk up to and say, you know what, Tanya, I'd really like your help. You've got a lot of good ideas. You got a lot of good ideas. And you have to do this with a straight face, okay? I've heard you speak out a lot about some of the issues that we have in our workplace, and I'd really like to have your input. I think it would be invaluable to us. But seriously, isn't that what it's about? It's about communication. It's about inclusion. It's about understanding why somebody has an attitude about it. Understand that, and I think somebody made the point, I think it was Jeff that made the point of the light curtain. There was that old timer who had been there forever, and he says, I'll show you 3 ways around the light curtain. That's who you need on your safety committee. You need the person who knows the shortcuts, who isn't, and I've got one in our workplace. And he's funny. He's a curmudgeon. And he walks around, and he's always it's like you can imagine him muttering under his breath all the time. But he brings up some really good stuff, and he holds me accountable to the process. And I love that about him. And that's what we have to do, is we have to recognize the different personalities. Have an outline, have a plan, Anything that you do that's safety related really needs to be documented. It really needs to be step-by-step process. It needs to be well communicated. You can't just speak off the cuff at a meeting or let it go awry. If you have a scheduled time at 3 o'clock you're going to start, you best start at 3 o'clock and you best finish at 3:35 or whatever your established time is. It's got to be controlled, and the only way to control your timing is to have a process, to understand exactly what we're going to do. We can't do all of these things. We can't have orientation programs, safety training, follow up on training issues, and do investigations all in an hour. So what is your list of responsibilities, and what's a reasonable time frame to accomplish that in? Maybe if you're only doing it quarterly, and my recommendation is, again, it varies on the size of your workplace. Maybe 1 month is accident investigations, another month is employee orientation improvement, another is developing training programs. Maybe it's 3 or 4 subject matter each month, and that's why you do it monthly so that you have an effective program, but it really ends up being, it takes you 3 months to get your quarterly meeting done. Does that make sense? Right? Because you can't schedule 6 hours for a safety committee meeting. That's not going to work. At the most, maybe an hour. And then you have to account for, if you have field employees like we do, we have guys that start at 4:30 in the morning, and we do our meetings at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're shot at the end of the day. So cookies and soda and coffee and stuff. Right? You need to have a plan. It needs to be coordinated. You need to have a list of things that you're going to do. Think about what problems you have in the workplace. Do you have a suggestion box? Is that your method of follow-up? Do you have people going out and doing assessments like Lorero does? And do you have documented assessments? And what type of data are you getting back? Where do you really need to focus? Certainly the Focus 4 is a great place to start. Falls, electrocutions, struck by, caught in betweens. Those can be your focus areas. And once you've eliminated all of those in your workplace, you've probably eliminated 85 to 90% of the risk. Good luck. See you in 30 years. Because it's just going to keep happening. So understand what your list of responsibilities is going to be. If you've got 12 people on the committee, have 3 assigned to one task, have 3 assigned to another task, organize it, break it down. Don't make it just a bitch session. It needs to be productive because people will buy into productive information transfer. They don't want to go and just complain. Well, some do. But the reality is people want to be made use of, made useful. They want their opinion to count. They want their observations to matter. So include them in that process and make sure that you communicate these things. When you have identified issues, make sure you close them. 2 primary reasons. 1 is you want to show effectiveness. 2 is you don't want any open items that can bite you in the event of an OSHA investigation. Oh yeah, we do inspections all the time, and you have up, 73 negative observations. Ladder unsafe use, improper scaffold use, lack of fall protection, no shoring. Where's your closure on those items? Don't do inspections if you're not going to close what you inspect. Have a plan, write a mission statement. I talked to our owner. I've been with BB&E now for almost 10 years, and I actually got him to change his verbiage. He said, safety is a priority. I said, no, it's not. It's a value. And now he says safety is a value all the time. He comes to all of our safety committee meetings. How'd you do your safety committee meetings during COVID? Did you have safety committee meetings during COVID? Time to get back on track, folks. Zoom, outside, large groups, separated, masks on. Can't see people sticking their tongues out at you when you bring up stupid ideas. Develop goals. Everybody's heard the term SMART goals. This is in your slides, so you don't have to write it down. But again, another example of effective training technique is you make people take notes. What we see and hear, we absorb a little bit of, but what we see, hear, and do, we absorb more of. It's good technique for us, not just to attend presentations, but to write stuff down. Make a list for yourself, and then make a list for where you left your list. Understand what your goals are. Be specific. Make sure that you have some mechanism for measuring success. What have we done? How long did it take? What did we accomplish? How much did we spend on gloves? How much did we save on insurance costs? Whatever it is, make it measurable so that we can define success. Well, yeah, we're safer this year than we were last year. Everything, that's all kind of relative. We went 2 years and 10 months without a recordable injury. 2 years and 10 months. And I'm like, knock on wood the whole time. We never talk about our success as safety professionals. We never say how good we're doing because the clock is ticking and something else is going to happen. Make sure that you understand what your goals are. Make sure that they're attainable and relevant to the process. There is nothing worse that you could do than to give a painter a toolbox talk about acetylene safety. Well, that's this week's toolbox talk. It came from Safety Meeting Weekly Toolbox Talks online. Didn't cost us a penny. It didn't cost you a penny because it's not effective. So make sure that it's relevant and it's delivered in a timely manner. Make sure you have an agenda. Follow your agenda. Keep it short, maybe 5 or 6 items. One of the things that I've learned with our owner now is he likes really short emails, like yes, no, thank you. I would like to do this. It will take this long. It will cost this much. That's the way to communicate. Short, sweet, impact, cost, right? I don't need to know any more of that. You're the safety guy. I don't care what the rule says. You're telling me I have to do it. I trust you. How much is it going to cost me? How long is it going to take? Will it affect our bottom line? Will it improve our insurance rates, et cetera? Make sure you follow up. If you do have a task set aside for members, 3 members are tasked with evaluating your orientation program, give them a schedule. Expect them to report back by the next meeting. Hold them accountable to that. Remember, it's a volunteer thing, so you got to be kind of careful about how you ask them to do things. Well, they are getting paid, right? But it's kind of voluntary participation. That's something else you need to think about, especially in a union environment. Are they on their own time or are they on company time? My suggestion to you would be is they're always on company time. They're helping you improve the business. They should be getting paid for doing what they're doing. We have union employees. We schedule our safety committee meetings during working hours, not after work. After work is their time. I don't do safety meetings at lunchtime. That's their time. Safety is company time. Make it fun, or at least make it interesting. Some of the most effective programs that I've seen over time is inviting guest speakers in. I think Tony's a great example. Come in and talk to your safety committee for 15, 20 minutes about lift safety. You could have OSHA, any one of their compliance assistance specialists, come in and talk to you for 15 or 20 minutes about safety committees, about silica, about machine guarding, about electrical safety. One of the best presentations I ever went to was we were doing a job down at Bear. Gilbane was the general contractor, and we had monthly site-specific safety committee meetings. And we went through our agenda, and we talked about accidents and injuries and near misses and upcoming plans and crane plans and all that kind of stuff, you know, the specifics of the job. But we always had a presenter come in. And one of the best presenters, I forget the manufacturer's name, but they were brought in by Abco, who was a welding supply company at the time, and I think they've changed names since then. But they told us all about how torches work. And they had, you know, these neat cutaway torches, and it showed how the cylinders work and how the gas goes through it and gets to the tip and how you light it and how do you make it work. That type of presentation is really cool because it's safety related, but it's also kind of an aha moment, dealing with the stuff that we're not usually used to. You know, so mix it up. Maybe assign a safety video to somebody. Go on YouTube and find something. Say, guys, watch this, and I want you to bring me 3 key points from this video. What really struck a note with you? Creative team building exercises. Kind of on the fence about like ziplining with the safety committee. You know, I guess it depends on where you go and who you're with and whatnot. But recognizing that you're in it together, and if you are the safety person, the designated safety person, the person with safety in your title, you're asking other people to help you do your job, basically, right? You're spreading the responsibility. So getting to know them on a more personal basis, you do a cookout afterwards, you go someplace and see something, you do, one thing that we've done is we've gone to a steel fabricator's shop and we've learned how they fabricate steel beams and columns and whatnot, and watch it, the steel as it comes in flat plates and goes through the process and comes out, and as columns and beams that can be bolted together with all the holes punched. It's kind of fascinating. Those shows are a dime a dozen on PBS. But there's some good stuff out there. Rotate membership and roles. People get tired of this stuff. You don't want to do this for more than 2 years in a row. Maybe it's a yearly assignment. Bring new blood in. Understand who is doing well in the fields, not doing well. Maybe somebody, an apprentice comes in and sees something from an entirely different perspective. Bring them in and have them talk to you as well. My most important suggestion to you would be is get out into the field. Take the safety committee out to the field and do job walkthroughs. Again, whether it's a plant, a storage environment, a job site, or whatever, but get the safety committee to participate. Remember, your safety committee in the state of Connecticut is supposed to be at least half labor and half management. So you need to figure out who that is. For us, it's laborers and carpenters. Laborers and carpenters like to be head down and get their work done. They don't like to talk about safety. But you get them out into the field, and we talk for hours because it's what they know, it's what they do, it's what they love. They will talk to you about what they're doing, but they don't want to sit in an office and talk about it. That's uncomfortable, especially if the owner's there. If the big boss is there and they have to walk by his office, that's kind of like, that's uncomfortable. It's like going to the principal's office. Avoiding extinction. Again, make sure that you have your goals. Make sure that you keep track of attendance. Make sure that you provide feedback to the attendees. Make sure that you close items that they've brought up. That's an excellent idea. And we're going to act on it, and it will be done next meeting. I promise you that. Whether it's I will have quotes for the gloves, or I'll have Magid come in and do a presentation for us, and we'll talk about the options. Whatever it is, whatever that action item, make sure it's ready by the next meeting, or whatever you have established as a reasonable goal. My suggestion to you would be is make your reasonable goals next meeting. Don't let stuff slide. Extinction. Clarity in agreement in vision. Again, guys, we're not here to whine, moan, or complain, and we're not pointing the finger at anybody. We're looking at opportunities for improvement. That's what it's all about. Every failure we have is an opportunity for improvement. Every mistake that is made is an opportunity for improvement. We are not here to place blame. We are here to understand. I can tell you for a fact that over the years I have learned very much so that safety failures are typically systemic failures. Is it relative to the individual not paying attention? Sometimes yes. Is it relative to the individual taking a shortcut? Sometimes yes. But we build that environment for them. And if they begin to sense that it's okay to do those things, to take shortcuts, if you've got that one supervisory personnel, whoever they are, who kind of lets things slide, safety glasses, that's for corporate. If you work for a construction company, right, and the owner comes on the job site, she best have work boots, safety glasses, and a hard hat on. And I'm not saying because women don't necessarily wear work boots. I'm saying that women also own construction companies too. I have to be, kind of fair about. You have to dress the part, you have to act the part, you have to look the part, you have to participate in it all. How to avoid failure, maintain momentum. Talk about this stuff. When I read about failures in the industry, whatever it is, crane collapses, building collapses, fatalities, trench citations, the $150 million settlement with the Seattle crane collapse, $150 million because the guys didn't take the crane apart the right way and it fell over and killed 4 people. Yeah. I make a note about it and I send it out to everybody. I speak to our personnel at least on a weekly basis, either in person or via email. They know what I know to the extent that I can. I share my angst with them. I'm like, guys, $150 million. Oh, and by the way, 4 dead people who had nothing to do with the accident. Talk about if Peter is part of the program and Peter came up with a good idea, Peter gets credit for what he did. I did an inspection report the other day for one of our jobs, and it's an inspection that we do for the owner. They've asked us to document our inspection. So I sent it to the owner, and I said, you know, I really have to say that our carpenter has done an amazing job in building protective devices, whether it's guardrails or covers or ramps. He built a ramp. There's a walkway ramp inside the building that we had to put a ladder on, and he built this. It looks like a cornhole ramp, basically. I think that's where he got the idea. So he was able to adjust the cornhole ramp to provide a level surface to put the ladder on, and it was gorgeous. I took a picture of it, and I put it in the report, and I sent it to everybody, and I said, Tom has done a really great job. He came up to me the next day. He was like, Marko, thank you so much. Oh, my gosh, nobody ever says I'm doing a good job. And I kind of had that in my mind. I mean, I kind of like knew what I was trying to do, but there was no ulterior motive. I just was thinking he did a great job, and he's really helping us work safely. But there kind of should be that ulterior motive in your mind. You should be seeking out the good stuff, too. One of the failures, I think, my own personal, over the years, is walking onto a job site and only saying, you don't have your glasses on. You're not tied off properly. Your scaffold is inappropriate. Your scissor lift hasn't been inspected today. Your forklift is overloaded. You're not wearing the right boots. Think people like me? Hey, man, good job. How do we succeed or fail? Walk by stuff and don't stop and say something. And, you know, Jeff alluded to it. I've said this a million times, if I stopped everywhere I saw failure on job sites as I drove by, I would never get anywhere. I would be stopping on every job site and saying something, and I've had to hold myself back. You know, go to New York City, go to Boston, you walk down the street, and it's like, yeah. Go to the Caribbean, it's like, oh my goodness. You have to say something if you see something. Eliminate the hazards when they've been found. Talk to people, bring them into the process, encourage them to participate. And one thing before we go, because I have 1 minute and 53 seconds and the light is yellow. I want you to go to your packages from this morning's presentations. It says morning session. And about halfway in are the OSHA slides that OSHA didn't cover. They did a great job. I think this presentation style was really cool, and it was great to hear Federal OSHA kind of really be personal about it and to hear them speak about the things that bother them, which is great, as opposed to, well, today we are talking about. But I want to point to you to 2 pages. One is slide number 21. It says workplace deaths, suicide and overdoses. From the OSHA presentation, page 21. Have you heard of the Focus 5? You've heard of the Focus 4. You know what the Focus 4 is, right? Falls, electrocutions, struck-bys, caught-in-betweens. And we talk about those being the leading killers. Suicides kill 5 times more people in construction than occupational exposures do. We lose 1,000 men and women a year to occupational hazards in construction. We lose 5,000 men and women a year in construction to suicide. Your safety committee needs to be talking about mental health. They need to be talking about depression. They need to be talking about diagnosed mental health and not, oh, did you hear Tom's schizophrenic? We need to be looking at people and saying, what are you doing and how are you going to do it safely? And how are you doing today? Because presenteeism is a real big problem. How many of you go home and you start watching the news and go, wow, man, I can't watch this anymore. This is horrific. What does that do to our collective psyche? What is it doing to your coworkers? We need to make mental health part of the conversation. Focus 5. Talk about all the stuff that we know we need to talk about. Get people engaged, but be prepared to pull people aside and say, man, are you all right? What's going on? Mental health first aid, look it up, Google it. You can go and get training. It's an 8-hour program. It gives you tools to help focus on this. Again, we all have varying levels of expertise and knowledge and experience and whatnot. Take what's going on in your mind today and the stressors that you have at home tonight, whatever it may be. Kids in school, sick parents, illness in the family, recent death, whatever it is. We are all affected by those things. We cannot hide from it. It needs to be part of the conversation. The last thing I want to say to you, and again, because you have the slides here, I'm going to give you a menu of items. Page 37, slide 37 from the OSHA handout. Stand Up for Grain Safety Week, that was this week. Grain safety, dust, confined space, moving parts. National Work Zone Awareness Week, next week. Traffic. Even, send a notice out. Think about your drive home and how upset we get when the speaker keeps you late and you have to get home for dinner. And there's a construction site that you're driving through. And gosh, they're slowing me down and I'm stuck in traffic again. Those people lose their lives because of fools like us passing on the right to get in the lane when the cones have been out for a mile and the signs have been out for a mile, but we have to drive right up to the very end and squeeze in. That's a great conversation to have with your safety committee because that's a behavior thing. That's an entitlement thing. That's a not thinking about other people thing. Fall protection stand down, that's kind of a no-brainer. For all of us, that is absolutely 100% ladder safety week, right? I mean, ladder safety week is every week, but we all use ladders in our workplaces at some point in time. I don't think there's a person here that could say, oh, we don't have any ladders. You need to talk about ladder safety. Illness prevention, that's coming. Not so bad here, much worse in the Southwest, but certainly something to be prepared for. Your next safety committee meeting should be talking about July and August, whatever your exposures may be. Trench safety stand down, construction guys, you absolutely need to have that on your radar. If you have a manufacturing environment, maybe not so much for you. Safe and Sound Week, hearing protection, overall safety, and then September, Suicide Prevention Month. There is so much that you can do as a safety committee. It's really just having a list, checking it twice, implementing it, following through, feedback, getting people involved in the process, and understand that we are all at risk on a daily basis for mental health challenges, whatever they may be. They may be systemic, actually diagnosable. You may be clinically depressed. You could simply be depressed. That's real, and it affects how we work, and we all know it. We've all had those feelings. Talk to a counselor. Talk to your priest. Go to an AA meeting. Whatever it is. But talk this stuff out.